Welcome to the Economy Magazine at I-24 News. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Here we're at the Herzliya Conference just outside of Tel Aviv, one of the biggest annual gatherings in the worlds of global diplomacy and the economy. We'll speak to a number of high-profile guests here. Let's get started.
Airbus, the European commercial aircraft developer and manufacturer, has been an industry leader for 4 decades. Their focus is on large aircraft 100 seats and up. The company's operations, including manufacturing, sub-assembly, final assembly, service centers around the world, from Asia to North America. This includes 16 sites across Europe, according to the Center for Aviation. They employ 58,000 people around the world from 100 nations. Airbus was the first to build a twin-engine wide-body jet in the mid-70s, and its 300 series planes have been hugely popular. In the first quarter of this year, the company earned nearly $900 million thanks to its sales of its stake in Dassault. Still, revenue dropped 4%. They've had a tumultuous year. The Germanwings crash that killed 150 people happened in an Airbus 320, and the Airbus 400M crash in Seville, Spain last month. Meanwhile, the European aerospace giant is working on designs for rockets and more as they keep an eye on the future.
Now on set, we're joined by Alan McCarter, the chairman and CEO of Airbus Incorporated. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
What kind of technologies is the company most excited about and interested in? I know that you are involved in the rockets going into space.
We have something called the EFAN, which is an electric airplane. And we think it's the front end of possibly the next generation of commercial airliners that will fly on electricity.
So how would this actually work? I mean, would it be connected to the wall as if you're...
Just a long cord, just plug it in.
So how actually would that work?
It's all about the batteries. And so we're working with advanced battery technology. And right now we have a 2-seat airplane. We'll build a 4-seat airplane. And maybe 20, 30 years, you'll have an airplane with 100 people on it that can fly on batteries, or a hybrid of batteries and fossil fuels.
Indeed. Well, I will be looking around for that in 30 years. So now moving on, how is the company expanding its global footprint?
Well, we have a global strategy, an industrial strategy that we've been pursuing, and I'm proud to say that we build airplanes in Europe, of course, primarily in Toulouse and Hamburg. We have a plant in Tianjin, China, and we're within a couple of weeks of opening a new facility in Mobile, Alabama. So that comes just in time because we're trying to up our production rates in the single aisle or the A320 family. So we're very proud of that addition of the U.S. to our global footprint.
Well, you do mention the U.S., and Boeing is one of your main competitors. How are you staying above the competition right now? And
generally, we split the market pretty much evenly between Airbus and Boeing. We're a little ahead on the single aisle or the smaller airplane. We're about 60-40 on that. We think we have a very good product line for the future and with our airline customers.
Well, the hospitality and travel industries are the most vulnerable to natural disasters and recessions, and we've seen quite a few of them lately. This does require CEOs and leadership to take swift and bold action on the leadership front. What is that process like as a CEO, having been in that spot?
Well, it's true that as you call them, economic shocks or whatever can affect air transportation, but it's also a very resilient industry. The employments or people traveling double every 15 years. It's been doing that now for decades, and it's still doing that. So there's a tremendous amount of growth, particularly in the emerging markets, where in Indonesia and India and China, where disposable income is growing at a very fast rate. More and more people want to fly. I mean, aviation is what connects our planet together. And so we see tremendous growth in our industry, particularly in the emerging markets, and we've got the perfect products to serve that.
Indeed. Well, which emerging market are you most excited about?
China's an exciting market. China will probably take over from the U.S. as the top aviation market in another 10 or 15 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, they
with
have,
all the people that they have there.
They have a great demand, and the disposable income, like I say, the middle class is growing very, very fast in China.
Indeed. Well, now moving on, I mean, we did see a number of aviation accidents with the Malaysia Airlines flights, also in Ukraine with conflict going on in the world. Has that impacted the industry at all?
Well, I always have said that the worst accident is one that you never learn anything from, but we are learning. And we're reminding ourselves that regardless of how sophisticated you can build an airplane and how reliable the computers are in an airplane, the least reliable computer of all is the human being. And so we have to really focus on human factors, the dealing of the pilot and the first officer, training, behavioral management, and vigilance. We have to make the pilots more capable of operating in this very demanding environment.
Indeed. You mentioned that, and it does remind me of that Germanwings plane crash that we saw in France. What steps is Airbus now taking to better to provide security on those flights?
Well, it's not really the manufacturer's job necessarily to do that. I mean, we collaborate with the airlines on it. I think one of the key lessons learned is that you don't leave one person in the cockpit. Most airlines had adopted two people in the cockpit at all times theory. Now I think every airline in the world has a similar policy. But we have to remember it defeats the purpose if you provide some type of back door to no pun intended, but some other method of unlocking the cockpit door, then that creates a vulnerability.
Indeed.
So we have to solve it without saying we have to create some sort of secret access to the door.
With the rise of ISIS and terrorism, what kinds of impact do you think that's going to have on global business as a whole?
Well, anytime you have global tensions like ISIS and regional conflict, it's bad for business, all business. It's not just people don't want to travel; they're frightened. Business does not want to invest. There has to be stability. There has to be a confidence that will attract commerce. And if that confidence can be restored, if some type of peace process with Israel and Palestine, if the global community can get together to try to limit and isolate the radicals like ISIS, that's all good for business. And without it, you can't have growth in business.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. Alan McCarter, the chairman and CEO of Airbus. We do very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we're joined on the set by Yadid Tirosh, the managing partner at Jerusalem Venture Partners. It is a venture capital fund which specializes in backing startups which focus on digital media, software, and cybersecurity. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon. Well, tell us a bit about the concept behind the labs that you guys have.
Very well. So one of the things that we found in Israel is that there are a lot of talent that needs funding at a very early stage. We call that seed funding. It's like growing a new plant. And what we did to accommodate that need, we established two incubators, one in Jerusalem that is focused on digital media, and the other one is something that we opened just a year and a half ago in the city of Beersheba that is focused on creating new companies in the cyber sector.
Well, this is part of a new trend. A number of companies are actually transitioning away from Tel Aviv to Beersheba. What is the motivation behind that?
So there is something very unique going on in Beersheba, and those of you who haven't been to Beersheba lately, I suggest that you come over and visit. What you have there is a very unique ecosystem. So first of all, you have the Ben Gurion University. It's the fastest growing university right now in Israel, which has a dedicated cyber faculty. Okay, so that's one element. The other element is the move of the technology units of the Israeli military to a campus that is based just next to the Ben Gurion University. And in the middle of all that, we've put the high-tech park, which has people like Oracle, IBM, Lockheed Martin, and many others. And in the center of all that, we have the JVP Cyber Labs that creates all these new cyber companies in this compound.
So they actually chose to be in a desert here.
Okay, so they choose to be next to this very interesting complex. They choose to get funding from JVP that is well known in creating companies in the cyber arena. And listen, it was a tough decision for us to go and open up a new center in Beersheba. But after we went there and we saw the momentum and we saw the potential, we decided to open up our next venture in Beersheba, and it's proven to be very successful. Since the beginning of 2014, we invested in 6 companies. We already had our first significant exit. We sold a company called SciActive to PayPal. And PayPal decided to open up their cyber design center in Beersheba around these companies. So it's a great success for the city of Beersheba and for us.
Indeed. Well, you mentioned the successful exit, but you do have a number of other successful ones, 26, I believe. Yeah. What do you attribute that to?
So JVP was established by Erel Margalit more than 20 years ago, and since then we were responsible for some of the largest exits out of Israel. I guess the main thing that works for us is really to go and push and creating very significant companies. You know that there is always some criticism about Israeli investors that sell their companies too early. We try to avoid that and to grow the company to their maximum potential.
Indeed. Well, let's go back to the startup nation in Israel here locally. Do you think there's going to be a point where Israel will mature into a tech nation, where we're going to see the Israeli Google, the Israeli Microsoft taking shape here?
So I think one should recognize that there are a few phenomena that are going on. First of all, almost more than any other country around the world, there are more multinationals that are coming in, acquiring companies and creating very significant design centers in Israel. Okay, that's true for companies like EMC and Cisco. It's also true for Apple that open up their only design center outside of the US in Israel. So that contributes a lot to local employment. Beyond that, we see a growing trend of companies that goes beyond just being a small startup and becoming very established. My previous company, NDS, was sold to Cisco for $5 billion after we had 1,200 people in Jerusalem. And the latest exits that we led, CyberArk, is the company that we took public in September. It's now the most successful IPO on NASDAQ for 2014, and it's responsible for more than 400 employments and high-tech positions in Israel around cyber. So I think there is room to create very significant companies out of Israel, and that's what we're trying to do.
And so you are saying that the evolution is going more in that direction. These are more mature companies at the time that they exit.
So it's always a very big dilemma, right? Because you have a company that you just created and suddenly it gets a very interesting price tag from a multinational that comes and wants to purchase that company. You need to have a lot of confidence in what you do, a lot of patience to actually take the company beyond that phase and actually get it to revenue and scale and take it public and make it an independent company.
Well, thank you so much for your insight on this, Gadi Tirosh. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joining us now on the set is Alain Vanish, the CEO of EDF Energy Nouvelle. It is a French renewable group, and he is currently based here in Israel, and this company is currently based in 18 countries. Thank you very much for being with us today. What are some of the new technologies in this area that you are excited about?
It's important to understand that the general technology does not come from Israel. Israel is very familiar with solar energy, with very low-tech solar energy. That's the Ben-Gurion dream of having solar heating, etc. The production of electricity is something, for the moment, is something which is based on mainly American and Asian companies. All the panels come from Asia except the panels that we used that come from France. But here we have found some future technologies, some small startups that develop things that we cannot use for now in our project. When we invest in a project, it's for 20 years. We go for something that has already been tested and proved.
Well, hypothetically speaking, right now we do rely on a lot of fossil fuels. At what point do you think that we're going to rely mostly on these kind of renewable energies?
Mostly is not a realistic target. To have 10%, that's a minimum target that the government has set for 2020. Let's say that the target could be 1/3 of the energy from renewable energy in the next decade, in the following decade, 2030, let's say.
Well, thank you very much for your insight on renewable energy, and that concludes our interview for now. Thank you. We are joined on set now by Jean-Sébastien Decaux, the CEO of JC Decaux, which is a Paris-based firm, and he focuses on Israel, Africa, as well as Southern Europe. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for the invite.
Well, you do specialize in outdoor advertising, and as you mentioned earlier, explain to us what is the digitization of outdoor advertising? What does that look like?
I think for JC Decaux, you have two folds. The first one is that as we are a service provider financed through the advertising. So we have this two-fold approach when we go and see the authorities. So basically, we need to bring all this digitalization adding value to our servicial offer. So our service, how do we make our service smarter? How do we make our service more connected and more being to interact with people? So that's one thing. And then how the advertising space benefit from this digitalization. Digital screen is obvious, and it's something that nowadays represents more or less 10% of our total turnover. So it's and the increase is quite important in the last 4 years. So we have a clear trend there. And then it's about basically having people to interact, to engage with the announcement in the street, in the airport, wherever they are with their smartphone. So how to connect the individual with a global campaign, whether it's in a city, it's in a country, or it's in an airport. That's the name of the game, and this is where we are working on to create the extra value.
Indeed, so we will be expecting more interactivity there. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the invite again.
Well, that concludes our coverage here at the Herzliya Conference. Do stay tuned for all the latest global economic coverage tomorrow at the Jaffa Port. Same time, same place. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you for watching.